I still can't believe everything changed because of one stupid promise made over too many drinks. If you'd asked me that morning whether Tyler and I would still just be best friends a month later, I would have laughed in your face. We'd been inseparable for almost 8 years. We'd survived college, terrible jobs, breakups, family drama, and enough embarrassing moments to blackmail each other for life. There was one thing we'd never done, though. We'd never crossed the line. At least, not until that night. My name's Marcus. I'm 27, work as a software developer, and I'm the kind of guy who usually thinks everything through before making a decision. Tyler was the exact opposite. He acted first, worried later, and somehow always landed on his feet. That balance was probably why we'd become such good friends. We met during freshman orientation after both getting hopelessly lost, looking for the engineering building. Instead of admitting we had no idea where we were going, we confidently walked around campus for nearly an hour, pretending one of us knew the way. Neither of us did. By the time we finally found the building, we'd missed half the orientation and were laughing too hard to care. From then on, we were practically attached at the hip. You know, Tyler liked to tell people, Marcus is the responsible one. I'm just here to make his life interesting. Usually he wasn't wrong. Friday nights meant pizza, video games, and arguing over movies. Weekend hikes turned into competitions over who could complain less about the climb. Holidays were split between our families because both our parents had eventually started treating the other like another son. My mom adored Tyler. His dad constantly reminded me that I was welcome at their house whenever I wanted. It was simple, comfortable, the kind of friendship people spend years hoping to find. The only complicated part was me. I'd known I was gay since I was 16. Tyler knew too. I'd come out to him during our sophomore year of college after convincing myself it might ruin everything. Instead, he'd thrown a bag of chips at my head. That's it? He'd asked. I blinked. You've looked like you're about to confess to murder for 3 days. Aren't you? Surprised. Dude, he shrugged. You're still the same annoying guy who steals my fries. That was the entire conversation. Nothing changed. Or at least, that's what I believed. Tyler dated women, serious relationships, casual dates, awkward first dates that gave us material to laugh about for weeks afterward. I never questioned it. Sure, he was ridiculously good-looking. Tall, athletic, messy brown hair that somehow always looked perfect, and a smile that made strangers start conversations with him. I wasn't blind, but he was my best friend. Some thoughts were better left alone, so I left them there. Life stayed easy until his older cousin announced he was getting married. That wedding became the event everyone had been looking forward to for months. The venue was a renovated vineyard about an hour outside the city, complete with fairy lights hanging from giant oak trees and enough open bar options to guarantee bad decisions. You realize, Tyler said while adjusting his tie in the hotel mirror, this ends one of our greatest traditions. What tradition? Being the only single guys at family weddings. I laughed. You've had 3 girlfriends since I've known you. Exactly. And somehow I'm still here. He straightened my tie before stepping back to admire his work. There. I could have done that, but not as well. You sound incredibly proud of yourself. I usually am. That grin. The same stupid grin he'd worn since we were 18. We headed downstairs just as guests were beginning to gather outside. The ceremony itself was beautiful, simple, emotional. Tyler's cousin cried halfway through his vows, which immediately made half the audience tear up. Even Tyler quietly wiped at one eye. I have allergies, he whispered when I looked over. Sure you do. Terrible allergies. After dinner came speeches. After speeches came dancing. After dancing came drinks, lots of drinks. Tyler wasn't usually a heavyweight, but something about weddings made everyone forget their limits. By 11 o'clock, he'd somehow convinced 3 uncles to join him in a dance competition. By midnight, he'd lost spectacularly. "You sabotaged me," he accused me, while accepting another beer from someone. "I literally wasn't involved. You existed near the dance floor. That's not evidence. It is tonight." I couldn't stop laughing. Eventually, the music shifted to slower songs, and people drifted outside toward the fire pits scattered around the property. The air had cooled, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fresh grass. Tyler dropped into an empty Adirondack chair beside mine with a dramatic sigh. "I love weddings. You said 2 hours ago they were overpriced. They are. So, they're overpriced and amazing. Fair enough." For a while, we just sat there, watching sparks rise into the night sky. Conversations around us blended into comfortable background noise. Someone passed us another round. Tyler accepted his without hesitation. I probably should have stopped him. Instead, I raised my own bottle to terrible financial decisions. He clinked it against mine, and lifelong bad ideas. Neither of us realized that before the night was over, one drunken promise between friends would become impossible to take back. By the time the bartender announced last call, most of the wedding guests had either wandered back to the hotel or were sitting around the fire pits, swapping stories that got less believable with every drink. Tyler leaned back in his chair and stretched. "You know what's funny?" Dangerous way to start a sentence. He ignored me. "We've been friends almost 8 years. Yep. You trust me?" I looked at him like he'd asked whether the sky was blue. "Obviously. No, I mean really trust me." I laughed. "You've seen me at my absolute worst. You talked me out of quitting college during finals. You drove 3 hours to pick me up when my car broke down. I trust you with my life." He nodded slowly, staring into the fire. "Same." For a minute, neither of us spoke. The alcohol had softened the usual rush of conversation between us, replacing it with something quieter, more thoughtful. "You ever wonder why we're both still single?" Tyler asked. I shrugged. "Timing. Bad luck. You being too picky." "I'm not picky. You once stopped seeing a girl because she kept saying espresso instead of espresso." He pointed a finger at me. "That matters." "No, it doesn't." "It absolutely does." I shook my head, laughing. "You are unbelievable." "So are you." "Are." The silence returned. Around us, conversation slowly faded as more guests called it a night. One by one, the fire pits emptied until only a handful of people remained. Tyler swirled the last sip of beer in his bottle before setting it on the table beside him. "Can I ask you something?" "You already are." He rolled his eyes. "You know what I mean." "I do." He hesitated longer than I'd ever seen him hesitate before asking a question. "When you came out," his voice had become noticeably quieter, "were you scared I'd stop talking to you?" I didn't even have to think about it. Terrified. His expression tightened. "I hate that. I know. I wish you'd told me sooner." "I didn't know how." He nodded. "I guess that makes sense." Another long pause. "I've never asked what it's actually like." "What is?" "Liking someone you know you can't have." That question caught me completely off guard. I looked over. Tyler wasn't looking at me anymore. His eyes stayed fixed on the dying fire. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "You do." I smiled faintly. "It mostly involves pretending you're okay until eventually you actually are. Does that work? Sometimes?" He rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "Sounds exhausting." "It can be." He stayed quiet after that, long enough that I assumed the conversation was over. Then he spoke again. I've been thinking about something lately. Oh, no jokes. Sorry. He took a slow breath. I think people put too much pressure on labels. I frowned slightly. What brought this on? My cousin. The one who just got married? Yeah. He picked at the label on his empty bottle. He told me before the ceremony that the happiest relationships start with friendship. I believe that. He also said if you're lucky enough to find someone you completely trust, Tyler paused, don't let fear make decisions for you. I considered that. Not bad advice. No. He looked over at me. What if people worry too much about what things are supposed to look like? I laughed softly. I feel like this conversation is way above our current blood alcohol level. He smiled. Probably. Then his grin returned. The mischievous one. The one that usually meant trouble. I got an idea. There it is. Hear me out. I'm already concerned. He leaned forward conspiratorially. If we're both somehow still single by 35, oh no. We get married. I burst out laughing. I'm serious. No, you're drunk. I can be both. I shook my head. Tyler. What? You've officially lost it. Think about it. I'd rather not. We already get along. That's not how marriage works. We split chores. You barely do your own laundry. I would improve. You said that when you bought an air fryer. That was different. It absolutely wasn't. He laughed with me before extending his hand across the table. Come on. For what? A promise. I'm definitely not making a drunken promise. Why not? Because drunken promises become sober problems. He pointed dramatically. See? That's exactly why you'd be the responsible husband. I groaned. I walked right into that one. You did. He kept his hand extended. If we're both still alone at 35. I stared at him. We stopped looking. Tyler. And we give us a chance. The smile on my face slowly faded. Because despite the alcohol, despite the joking tone, for just a second, he looked completely serious. I searched his face for the punchline. It never came. You're kidding, I said quietly. Maybe. That's not an answer. He shrugged. I don't know. The fire crackled between us. My heart suddenly felt much louder than the music drifting from inside the reception hall. You don't have to answer. I know. He looked down at the table. I can't imagine trusting anyone more than I trust you. I swallowed. That wasn't helping. At all. I think we're both too drunk for this conversation. He laughed softly. Probably. But he still hadn't taken his hand back. Neither had I. Finally, against every logical thought in my head, I reached across the table. Our hands met. He smiled. So it's a deal. I shook my head. It's a stupid deal. The best kind. I sighed dramatically. If we're both still single at 35, we give dating each other an honest chance. Tyler squeezed my hand once. No backing out. No reminding me tomorrow. Oh, I'm absolutely reminding you tomorrow. You are the worst. I know. We shook on it. A ridiculous promise. Made between best friends. Neither of us realized that neither of us would make it anywhere close to 35 before that promise started changing everything. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and exactly one clear memory from the night before. The handshake. Everything else was blurry. The dancing, the speeches. Tyler trying to convince an 80-year-old woman to teach him ballroom dancing. All of it came back in fragments. But the promise? That part was crystal clear. I stared at the hotel ceiling for a long moment before groaning into my pillow. What did we do? A loud knock interrupted my thoughts. Marcus, Tyler's voice. You alive? Barely. Good enough. I dragged myself out of bed and opened the door. He looked just as terrible as I felt. Hair sticking up in every direction, sunglasses already on despite being indoors, coffee in one hand, breakfast sandwich in the other. "You look awful," I said. "So do you." He held out the coffee. "Peace offering." I accepted it immediately. "I forgive you. I haven't apologized." "You will." He laughed as we walked toward the hotel lobby. Most of the wedding guests were checking out. The atmosphere had that quiet, exhausted feeling that followed every big celebration. We found an empty table near the breakfast area. For a few minutes we concentrated entirely on eating. Neither of us mentioned the previous night. Finally, Tyler cleared his throat. "So," I sighed, "there it is. You remember?" Unfortunately, he scratched the back of his neck. "I wasn't sure if we—" "No, I remember everything." He stared at his coffee. "I don't have to bring it up again. You already did." "Fair." Another awkward silence settled between us. It was strange. Tyler and I almost never felt awkward. Even when we disagreed, conversations flowed naturally. Now it felt like we were both carefully choosing every word. "I was drunk," he finally said. "I know. I say dumb things when I'm drunk. You absolutely do." He smiled weakly. "I don't want things to be weird. They aren't." "Really?" I lied. "No." He let out a breath that sounded almost relieved. "Good." Then after another pause, "I'm not taking it back." That made me stop chewing. "What?" "The promise." He shrugged, looking strangely calm. I know it sounded ridiculous. It did. But he met my eyes. I meant it. I searched his face. There wasn't even the hint of a joke. "Tyler, hear me out. I'm listening. If we're still alone years from now," he shrugged again. "Why not?" I didn't know how to answer, because logically, it made no sense. Emotionally, it somehow made even less. "You've really thought about this?" "A little. A little." He smiled. "More than a little." That surprised me. "Why?" He leaned back in his chair. "I don't know. That's not true." He sighed. "Fine." He looked out the window toward the parking lot. "My parents. What about them?" "They started as friends." I nodded. "They've told me that story. They always say the strongest relationships are built on friendship." "That's true." "So," he looked back at me, "if I ever ended up with someone, I'd want it to feel like what we already have." My chest tightened. "You realize that's an incredibly high standard." "I know. You'll probably scare people away." "I've considered that." I laughed despite myself. He smiled. "There it is." "What?" "You stopped looking nervous." "I wasn't nervous." "Liar." "I was confused." "I'll take confused." We finished breakfast talking about safer topics. The drive home felt mostly normal. Music, traffic complaints, arguments over which fast food place deserved to exist. Slowly, the weirdness faded. Or at least, it seemed to. 3 weeks passed. Life returned to its usual rhythm. Work, weekend basketball, movie nights, everything looked exactly the same. Except, I started noticing little things. Things I'd somehow ignored before. Tyler texted me every morning. Not just memes anymore. Actual good morning messages. He started asking if I'd eaten lunch. He'd randomly stop by my apartment with coffee because he was already in the neighborhood. He wasn't. I checked once. He'd driven almost 20 minutes. When I pointed that out, he simply shrugged. "Wanted coffee? You passed 6 coffee shops. Yours is better." "It isn't." "I know." Then he'd grin. It should have felt normal. Instead, it made me think about that promise every single time. One Friday evening, we were grocery shopping together before our weekly movie night. Tyler reached for a box of cereal at exactly the same time I did. Our hands bumped. Normally we'd joke about it. Instead, neither of us moved immediately. His fingers stayed lightly against mine for just a second longer than necessary. When he finally pulled away, he looked almost surprised he'd done it. Sorry, it's fine. But his ears had turned slightly red. Mine probably had too. Later, while standing in line to pay, an elderly cashier smiled warmly at us. You boys make a cute couple. I nearly dropped my wallet. We're not. Before I could finish, Tyler simply smiled. Thanks. I turned toward him so fast I almost gave myself whiplash. He didn't correct her, not once. Outside the store, I finally looked at him. You could have said something. He loaded groceries into the trunk. About what? The couple comment. Oh. He closed the trunk. I didn't think it mattered. It wasn't true. No. Another small smile. But it didn't bother me. Then he climbed into the driver's seat, leaving me standing there, wondering why. For the first time in 8 years, it suddenly bothered me how much I wished she'd been right. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. It would have been easier, much easier, because the alternative meant accepting that something between Tyler and me had actually changed after that wedding, and I wasn't ready for that. For the next couple of weeks, I made a conscious effort to treat him exactly the same as always. Same movie nights, same sarcastic comments, same terrible basketball games where he insisted every foul against him was clearly intentional. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inside, everything felt different. One Saturday afternoon, Tyler texted me. Tyler, busy. Me, depends. Tyler, I need help buying furniture. Me, since when do you ask for help? Tyler, since I realized I have terrible taste. I smiled. Me, that's surprisingly self-aware. Tyler, don't make me regret inviting you. An hour later, we were wandering through a giant furniture store, arguing over coffee tables. Absolutely not, I said, pointing at a glossy black one. Why? It looks like something a villain would own. Tyler frowned at it. I kind of see it. You absolutely see it. He laughed. Fine. We kept walking. At one point, he disappeared around a corner. I found him a minute later sitting on one of the display couches. Marcus, no. You don't even know what I was going to ask. I do. You don't. You're trying to convince me to help carry this upstairs. He grinned. Maybe. I'm not throwing out my back because you wanted the heavy one. It has lumbar support. I don't care. It reclines. I still don't care. He patted the seat beside him. Just sit down. Against my better judgment, I did. The couch was ridiculously comfortable. Told you. I hate admitting you're right. You'll survive. For a while, we just sat there, watching people walk through the showroom. It felt oddly peaceful. Then a little girl wandered over, holding her mother's hand. She looked at us, then at her mom. They're cute. The woman looked embarrassed. I'm so sorry. Tyler smiled politely. It's okay. The little girl tilted her head. Are you getting married? I felt my face immediately heat up. Before I could answer, Tyler chuckled. Not today. The mother quickly led her daughter away while apologizing again. The moment they were gone, I looked at him. You enjoy watching me suffer. A little. You could have corrected her. I could have. But you didn't. He leaned back against the couch. I don't know. What? I liked that she assumed we looked happy. I blinked. That's oddly specific. He shrugged. We do look happy. I couldn't argue with that. Because we were. Later that evening, after assembling what felt like 600 pieces of furniture, we collapsed onto Tyler's living room floor. I never want to see another instruction manual again, I groaned. They're written by sadists. No argument here. He tossed me a bottle of water. You staying for dinner? I should probably head home. You always say that, because I have laundry. You've been saying that for 3 hours. I like having excuses. He laughed. I ordered pizza already. You assumed I'd stay. I hoped. I looked around his apartment. It felt strangely lived in now. The new bookshelf, the couch we'd picked together, pictures from hiking trips, concert tickets pinned to a corkboard. There were more photos of us than I realized. Almost every major memory from the last 8 years. You okay? Tyler's voice pulled me back. Yeah. You looked lost. Just thinking. Dangerous. I was noticing something. What's that? This place. He looked around. What about it? It doesn't really feel like just your apartment anymore. He frowned. I don't follow. I pointed toward the bookshelf. I picked that. He nodded. The lamp. You chose it. The rug. You talked me into buying it. The pictures. He smiled. We've done a lot. Exactly. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, Tyler laughed quietly. I guess you've been decorating my life for years. The words hit me harder than they should have. I looked away. Don't say things like that. Why? You make them sound. I searched for the right word. Important. They are important. His voice had softened. Marcus. I met his eyes again. I don't think I tell you enough. He hesitated. How much you've always mattered to me. My heart started beating faster. You don't have to. I know, but I want to. The room suddenly felt very quiet. I've been thinking about that promise. Of course he had. So have I. He smiled faintly. I figured. I keep asking myself why you made it. And I still don't know. Tyler looked down at the unopened pizza boxes on the table. I don't think I fully knew either. That answer surprised me. What changed? He rubbed his hands together. I started paying attention. To what? Us. My stomach tightened. The way we already act. I stayed silent. We spend most weekends together. I nodded. We know each other's families. Yeah. You call me before anyone else when something good happens. I smiled. So do you. You know exactly how I take my coffee. So? You notice when I'm stressed before I say a word. I couldn't deny that. He leaned forward slightly. I realized. He paused. I've never felt that comfortable with anyone else. I swallowed. Tyler, I'm not saying I have all the answers. Then what are you saying? He held my gaze. I'm saying. Another pause. Maybe that drunken promise wasn't as random as I thought. The doorbell rang. Pizza. Perfect timing. Or maybe the worst possible timing. Because neither of us moved immediately. We just sat there, looking at each other, both realizing the conversation we'd been avoiding for weeks had finally begun. The pizza sat on Tyler's coffee table for almost 10 minutes before either of us remembered to open the boxes. Neither of us was hungry anymore. The conversation we'd been having had stolen our appetite. Tyler finally broke the silence. We should probably eat. Probably. Neither of us moved. He laughed quietly. We're really bad at pretending nothing happened. I noticed. He rubbed a hand across his face. I didn't mean to make things complicated. You didn't. I think I did. I considered that for a second. No. He looked at me. You made things honest. That surprised both of us. I wasn't even sure where the words had come from. Tyler smiled faintly. Honest is good. It usually is. Another long pause. Then he asked the question I'd secretly been afraid of. Can I ask something without you overthinking it? I'll try. Have you ever... He stopped himself. Never mind. No. He shook his head. It's stupid. Ask. He stared at the unopened pizza box. Have you ever thought about us? My pulse jumped. There it was. The question I'd spent years refusing to answer, even to myself. I could have lied. It would have been easy. It also would have destroyed everything we'd built. So I took a slow breath. Once, he looked up. Only once? I laughed nervously. No. His eyebrows lifted. More than once. How many? I smiled helplessly. I stopped counting years ago. He stared at me. You never said anything. You were my best friend. So you were straight, as far as you knew. I frowned. What does that mean? Tyler leaned back on the couch. I've been asking myself that lately. You've lost me. I know. He exhaled slowly. I've dated women. I know. I cared about them. I know. But he searched for the right words. I've never felt with them what I feel when I'm with you. I didn't interrupt. I always assumed that meant I just hadn't met the right person. And now? He gave a quiet laugh. Now I'm not so sure. The room felt impossibly still. I don't know what that says about me. It doesn't have to say anything. He looked at me. You make everything sound simpler. It usually isn't. No, he smiled. It isn't. After dinner, we decided to walk. Neither of us wanted to end the night yet. The streets around Tyler's neighborhood were quiet, the air cool enough that people had mostly gone inside. We walked side by side without speaking for a while. Eventually, Tyler shoved his hands into his hoodie pocket. I've been remembering things. What kind of things? He laughed. Moments. Like the camping trip 3 years ago. I smiled. When you nearly burned breakfast. I did not nearly burn breakfast. The pan caught fire. It was a controlled incident. It absolutely wasn't. He bumped my shoulder. My point is, he looked ahead. I remember waking up freezing. I laughed. You stole my sleeping bag. No, you absolutely did. I borrowed half of it. You rolled over and took the whole thing. He grinned. You didn't complain. I was too tired. He became quiet again. I remember waking up with my arm around you. I blinked. I forgot about that. I didn't. I looked over. You've really been thinking. Too much, he sighed. I didn't move. What? My arm. Oh. I woke up. And? I realized I was holding you. I waited. I should have moved. But you didn't. He shook his head. I just stayed there. For how long? A couple minutes. I looked down at the sidewalk. I never knew. I know. His voice softened. I think that's when it started. What started? He smiled sadly. My confusion. We reached a small park overlooking the river. Most of the benches were empty. We sat on one near the water. The city lights reflected across the surface, broken by the gentle current. I've been scared, Tyler admitted. Of what? That I was imagining all this. You aren't. How do you know? Because I've been feeling it too. He turned toward me. You have? I nodded. Ever since the wedding. He looked relieved. I thought I was losing my mind. You might still be. Fair. We both laughed. The tension eased. Just a little. Then Tyler became serious again. Marcus. Yeah. I don't want to date you because of some stupid promise. I frowned. I don't either. I want. He stopped. I want to know if there's actually something here. I stared at the river. There might be. Might? I'm trying not to get my hopes up. He smiled softly. I've spent the last month trying not to get mine up. I laughed under my breath. We're really terrible at this. We've never done this before. No. We've always been friends. I looked at him. My favorite person. His eyes met mine. Mine too. The words hung between us. Simple, completely honest, and somehow more intimate than anything else we'd said all night. A cool breeze swept across the river. Without thinking, Tyler's hand brushed against mine on the bench. Neither of us pulled away. A few seconds passed. Then his fingers slowly turned and gently laced with mine. He didn't squeeze. He didn't look at me, almost like he was giving me every chance to let go. I didn't. Instead, I intertwined my fingers with his. His thumb lightly brushed the back of my hand. So, his voice was barely above a whisper. Does this feel weird? I looked down at our hands, then back at him. After all the years we'd spent beside each other, after every joke, every road trip, every late-night conversation, the answer surprised even me. No, I smiled. It feels familiar. Tyler smiled too. So that's a good sign. I nodded. I think it is. For the first time since that drunken promise, neither of us wondered if we'd made a mistake. Instead, we started wondering why we'd waited so long. Neither of us said much on the drive back to Tyler's apartment, not because things were awkward, because they weren't. If anything, they felt calmer than they had in weeks. Our hands had only been linked for a few minutes on that park bench, but somehow it felt like we'd crossed a bridge we'd been walking toward without realizing it. The silence between us wasn't empty anymore. It was comfortable, almost hopeful. When we got back to his apartment, Tyler unlocked the door and tossed his keys into the bowl by the entrance. So, he laughed. We really need to stop starting conversations like that. I was thinking the same thing. He leaned against the kitchen counter. I don't want to rush this. I don't either. I also don't want to pretend nothing happened. I nodded. That sounds impossible now. It does. He smiled. So, what do we do? I looked around the apartment before meeting his eyes again. We do what we've always done, which is we spend time together. As he left the sentence unfinished, I finished it. As two people figuring out whether this is friendship becoming something more. He let out a quiet breath. I like that answer. I was hoping you would. The next 2 weeks became a strange mix of familiar routines and completely new feelings. Nothing dramatic happened. There wasn't some huge moment where everything suddenly changed. Instead, it happened slowly, naturally. We still met for coffee before work on Wednesdays. We still argued over which pizza place was overrated. We still texted each other ridiculous memes at 2 a.m. But now, there were little differences. Tyler started waiting a second longer before saying goodbye. His hugs became just a little tighter. When we watched movies, he'd sit close enough that our shoulders rested together without either of us pretending it was accidental. And every single time, neither of us moved away. One Saturday, we decided to drive to the lake we'd visited every summer since college. It had become our tradition. Same hiking trail, same dock, same terrible sandwiches from the little cafe nearby. As we walked toward the water, Tyler glanced over at me. You know what I realized? What's that? This place is basically our history. I looked around. He wasn't wrong. The old picnic table where we'd celebrated graduation, the dock where he'd accidentally dropped both our phones into the water, the trail where we'd gotten hopelessly lost because he'd insisted he knew a shortcut. You still owe me a phone. I bought you a new one. After 3 weeks, you survived. Barely. He laughed. I still say it was an adventure. It was poor navigation. We reached the dock and sat with our feet hanging over the edge. The lake was almost perfectly still. Tyler skipped a stone across the surface. I've been happier lately, I smiled. I noticed. You have? You smile more. He looked surprised. You actually noticed that? I notice everything about you. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Tyler stared at me. I immediately looked away. Sorry. For what? I didn't mean to make that sound. Marcus, I looked back. His expression was warm. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. I laughed nervously. It sounded less embarrassing in my head. It wasn't embarrassing. He moved a little closer on the dock. I noticed things too. Like what? The way you bite the inside of your cheek when you're nervous. I blinked. You do? Every time. I didn't know that. I know when you're pretending you're okay. He smiled softly. I know when you're tired before you admit it. I listened quietly. And he hesitated. I know exactly what your laugh sounds like when something genuinely makes you happy. My chest tightened. No one's ever paid that much attention to me. I have. For how long? He thought for a second. Years. The hike back was quieter. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. When we reached the parking lot, Tyler stopped beside his truck. I've been meaning to ask you something. What? He suddenly looked far more nervous than I'd seen him in a long time. Would it be weird if... He rubbed the back of his neck. I took you on an actual date. I smiled before I even realized I was doing it. You mean a real one? Yeah. Not two friends hanging out. No. One date. Just one. I couldn't help laughing. You've taken me to dinner about 100 times already. I know. But this time, he looked directly into my eyes. I'd know why my heart was racing. For a second, I completely forgot how to speak. Then I stepped closer. I'd like that. His shoulders relaxed immediately. Really? Really? He grinned. When? Next Friday. Dinner. Dinner. You'll let me pay. Don't push your luck. He laughed. I had to try. Friday arrived much faster than either of us expected. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror for almost 15 minutes trying to decide whether I was overdressed. My phone buzzed. Tyler. I'm outside. My stomach immediately flipped. I walked downstairs and opened the front door. Tyler was standing beside his truck wearing a navy button-up I'd never seen before. When he looked up, he froze. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he smiled. You look. He shook his head. Wow. Heat immediately rushed into my face. You clean up pretty well yourself. I was hoping you'd think so. Instead of his usual sarcastic greeting, he walked over, held out a single sunflower. I remembered they're your favorite. I stared at it. Months earlier, I'd casually mentioned that my grandfather used to grow sunflowers behind his house. I'd completely forgotten telling him. He hadn't. You remembered. I remember everything you tell me. I accepted the flower carefully. You're making this very difficult. What? It's hard not to fall for someone who pays attention like that. The words escaped before I could stop them. Tyler's smile slowly widened. I was kind of hoping that would happen. As we stood there smiling at each other, it finally became impossible to deny. Somewhere between years of friendship, one ridiculous drunken promise, and countless ordinary days together, we had quietly fallen in love. I don't think either of us slept much after that first date. It had gone perfectly, which somehow made it even more terrifying, because now there was something real to lose. Tyler texted me the next morning before I even got out of bed. Tyler, did last night actually happen? I laughed. Me. I was about to ask you the same thing. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Tyler. Good. Me. Good. Tyler. I was worried I dreamed the whole thing. I smiled at my phone. Me. The sunflower is sitting on my kitchen table. A few seconds passed. Tyler. Okay. That makes me ridiculously happy. So did the message. More than I wanted to admit. Dating Tyler didn't feel like starting a new relationship. It felt like continuing one that had already existed for years. There was no awkward phase of learning favorite foods or childhood stories. I already knew them. He knew mine. Instead, we discovered things we'd never had a reason to ask before. One evening over dinner, I looked at him across the table. "Can I ask you something?" "Always. When did you realize?" He smiled into his drink. "You first. That's not fair." "It absolutely is." I laughed. "Fine." I thought back carefully. I think, I smiled to myself, the wedding made me notice you differently. He nodded. "But the feelings," I sighed. "They'd probably been there a lot longer." "How much longer?" "I honestly don't know." I looked at him. I just got really good at pretending they were only admiration. Tyler stayed quiet. "And you?" He leaned back in his chair. "The camping trip." I blinked. "The sleeping bag?" He nodded. "I woke up with my arm around you. I remember not wanting to move." He looked almost embarrassed admitting it. I told myself it was because I was comfortable. "And now?" He laughed softly. "Now I know it was because letting go felt wrong." A week later, Tyler invited me to his parents' house for Sunday dinner. Normally, that wasn't unusual. I'd been going there for years. This time, everything felt different. His mom opened the front door with her usual smile. "Marcus," she hugged me tightly. "It's been too long." "It was last weekend." "Exactly." Tyler rolled his eyes behind her. "Told you." His dad appeared from the kitchen. "About time you boys got here. You invited us for 6. It's 6:02. Unacceptable." The familiar teasing made me relax. Maybe we were worrying for nothing. Dinner started normally. Stories, laughter, his younger sister teasing Tyler about his inability to cook. Then, his mom looked between us. "So," Tyler and I exchanged a glance. "Here it comes." "I've noticed something." Neither of us answered. She smiled. "You two seem..." She searched for the word. "Lighter." Tyler looked at me before answering. "We're happy." "I can see that." His dad nodded. "You've both looked happier lately." Tyler reached under the table. His hand found mine, hidden from everyone else. He squeezed gently. It was such a small gesture, but it gave me courage. After dinner, we helped wash dishes while his parents sat on the back porch. Tyler dried plates while I washed them. "I think we should tell them." I looked at him. "Tonight? I don't want to hide." Neither did I. We walked onto the porch together. His parents looked up. His mom smiled immediately. "What are those serious faces about?" Tyler laughed nervously. "Mom." She raised an eyebrow. "I've known Marcus almost as long as I've known you." "I know. So whatever it is." She smiled gently. "Just say it." Tyler looked at me. I nodded. "Once." He took a breath. "Marcus and I." He reached for my hand. This time, in plain sight. "We're together." Silence. His mother stared at our joined hands, then at our faces. His father leaned back slowly. Neither of them spoke. For about 5 seconds, which felt like forever. Finally, his mom stood up, walked over, and hugged both of us at once. I was wondering how long it would take. Tyler blinked. "What?" She laughed. "Oh, sweetheart." She looked at both of us. "You've loved each other for years." I stared at her. "We thought we were hiding it." His dad chuckled. "Hiding?" He shook his head. "Marcus, you drove across the state in a snowstorm because Tyler had the flu." I shrugged. "He needed help." His father smiled knowingly. "Tyler skipped a job interview because you were having surgery." I looked at Tyler. "I told you to go. I wasn't leaving you alone." His mom folded her arms. "You boys kept calling each other best friends." She smiled, but the way you looked after each other. She shook her head affectionately. That was never ordinary. Tyler laughed in disbelief. You seriously knew? His dad grinned. We were taking bets on who'd figure it out first. His mom nodded. Your cousin guessed 3 years ago. I covered my face. Please stop talking. Everyone laughed. Tyler slipped an arm around my shoulders. I can't believe we were the last ones to know. His mom kissed him on the forehead. Sometimes, she smiled warmly at both of us. The people living the story are the last ones to understand it. As we drove home that night, Tyler reached over and took my hand. I think your turn is next. My parents? He nodded. I smiled. They're going to pretend to be surprised. You think? I know. Tyler laughed. Apparently everyone except us saw this coming. I intertwined my fingers with his. For once, I looked over at him. I'm glad we were slow. He smiled back. So am I. Because if we'd rushed it, we might never have realized that the strongest relationships don't always begin with romance. Sometimes, they begin with a friendship worth risking everything for. Telling my parents turned out to be exactly as Tyler predicted. Completely anticlimactic. My mom opened the front door, smiled at both of us, and immediately said, You finally figured it out? I just stared at her. You too? She laughed. Oh, honey. My dad looked up from the living room. About time. I blinked. Seriously. He muted the television. You two have been each other's favorite person for years. Tyler looked at me and started laughing. I told you. You absolutely did not. I strongly implied it. My mom pulled us both into a hug. I've never been happier to be right. A month later, life had settled into a new rhythm. Not a completely different one. Just a better one. Tyler still came over every Friday. Only now he didn't leave quite so early. I still stole fries off his plate. He still complained every single time. We still argued about movies, still went hiking, still got competitive over board games. The friendship hadn't disappeared. It had simply grown into something stronger. One evening, we were sitting on my apartment balcony, watching the sun disappear behind the buildings. Tyler rested his feet on the railing. You know what's weird? What? I thought dating you would feel completely different. And, he smiled, it feels exactly the same. I raised an eyebrow. That's your romantic speech? No, he laughed. Let me finish. I waited. It feels the same. He reached for my hand. Except, now, I don't have to pretend I don't want to hold your hand. I smiled. That's better. I thought so. As autumn rolled in, we planned our first weekend trip as a couple. Instead of somewhere new, Tyler booked the same cabin we'd rented with friends years earlier. The camping place? He nodded. I figured we should rewrite a memory. When we arrived, everything looked exactly as I remembered. The trees, the lake, the tiny wooden dock. Even the old fire pit was still there. That first night we sat outside wrapped in blankets while the fire crackled between us. Tyler stared into the flames. I've been thinking, that's always dangerous. Probably. He smiled. Do you remember the promise? I laughed. How could I forget? He held up an imaginary glass. If we're both still single at 35, I finished it. We give dating each other an honest chance. He shook his head. We didn't even make it to 28. Not even close. I guess we failed. I think we cheated. He leaned back. I'm glad. So am I. The next morning, we decided to hike the same trail we'd taken years before. Halfway up the hill, Tyler suddenly stopped walking. What? He looked strangely nervous. I need a minute. You okay? Yeah. He reached into his jacket pocket. I've been carrying this around for 3 weeks. My heart immediately sped up. He pulled out a small velvet box. I stared at it. Tyler, before you panic, he laughed nervously. I'm not asking because I think we have to. He took one slow breath. I'm asking because, his voice softened, I've already spent 8 years building a life with my favorite person. He opened the box. Inside was a simple silver ring. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, just elegant. Exactly the kind of thing Tyler would choose. I don't care that we started as friends, he smiled. I think that's the best part. People always say you're supposed to marry the love of your life. He looked directly into my eyes. I think you're supposed to marry your best friend. I felt tears building before I could stop them. You seriously planned this? For weeks? You idiot. I've been called worse. I laughed through watery eyes. You realize I was supposed to have a speech prepared. You can still make one. I stepped closer. I don't need one. His eyebrows lifted. No. I shook my head. I've spent years wishing I'd had the courage to tell you how I felt. I slipped the ring from the box, then looked back at him. My answer was yes, long before you asked. His smile was the biggest I'd ever seen. So. He laughed. We really have to stop starting sentences like that. I know. I slid the ring onto my finger, then wrapped my arms around him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The wind moved gently through the trees around us. The lake shimmered below, and for the first time since we'd met, there was nothing left unsaid. 6 months later, Tyler's cousin invited us to another family wedding. As we stood outside the reception hall waiting for the ceremony to begin, Tyler bumped my shoulder. You know what today reminds me of? I have a feeling I do. The fire pit, the beer, the terrible idea. I laughed. The drunken promise. He looked down at the ring on my hand before smiling. Best bad decision I ever made. I intertwined my fingers with his. It wasn't the alcohol. What do you mean? I looked toward the ceremony, where 2 people were about to promise each other a future. The alcohol just gave you the courage to say what your heart already knew. Tyler smiled. You know. What? If someone had told 20-year-old me I'd fall in love with my best friend, you would have laughed. I would have laughed for an hour. And now? He squeezed my hand. Now, I can't imagine my life any other way. The music began to play. Guests took their seats. As we walked inside together, I thought back to that ridiculous handshake around a dying fire. One drunken promise between friends. It had sounded like a joke. It became a question, then a possibility, and finally, the beginning of the happiest chapter of both our lives.